Richard Langston had spent the last 2 decades amassing a fortune that most people could only dream of. His real estate empire stretched across major cities, and his tech investments had made him a household name in the business world. He was a man of wealth and power, accustomed to 5-star hotels, private jets, and exclusive business circles where only the elite gathered. Yet, despite his success, Richard found himself feeling increasingly disconnected from the world around him. His life was a series of meetings, negotiations, and transactions, leaving little room for genuine human connection. On this particular evening, Richard was on his way to a high-profile gala, an event filled with industry leaders and influential figures. He was dressed in a tailored charcoal suit, his watch, a limited-edition Rolex, glinting under the streetlights. The hum of his luxury Bentley was smooth as he cruised down the nearly empty road just outside the city limits. He had taken this route to avoid traffic, but as fate would have it, an unexpected mishap occurred. A sharp pop echoed through the car, followed by an unsettling grinding noise. Richard instinctively gripped the steering wheel, easing the car onto the shoulder. He let out a frustrated sigh. A flat tire. He was far from any major service station, and his phone signal flickered weakly before disappearing altogether. Just his luck. Richard stepped out of the car, irritation evident in his sharp movements. He wasn't used to dealing with such mundane problems. Usually, his assistant or driver handled these inconveniences. But tonight, he was alone. He examined the flat tire and shook his head. He had a spare, but changing it himself was out of the question. As he contemplated his options, the faint sound of a bicycle approaching broke the silence. A young boy, no older than 13, pedaled toward him. He had dark brown skin, a lean frame, and bright, inquisitive eyes. His clothes were clean but worn, and his backpack looked heavy on his small shoulders. "Hey, mister," the boy called out, slowing to a stop a few feet away. "You got a problem?" Richard raised an eyebrow. "Flat tire," he replied. The boy parked his bike against a nearby post and stepped closer. "I can help." Richard studied him for a moment. "You know how to fix a flat on a Bentley?" The boy grinned, undeterred by the skepticism in Richard's voice. "A tire's a tire, sir. My uncle's a mechanic. He taught me a thing or two." There was something about the boy's confidence that intrigued Richard. He nodded toward the car. "All right. Let's see what you can do." Without hesitation, the boy got to work. His hands moved with surprising efficiency as he loosened the lug nuts and jacked up the car. Richard watched, half impressed, half bemused. "What's your name?" he asked after a moment. "Jaden," the boy said without looking up. "But people call me Jay." Richard folded his arms. "You do this often?" Jay chuckled. "Not on Bentleys. But I help out where I can. My mom says kindness don't cost a thing." Something about those words struck a chord in Richard. It had been a long time since he'd heard someone speak of kindness without expecting something in return. 15 minutes later, the spare tire was in place. Jay wiped his hands on his jeans and stepped back. "All set." Richard reached for his wallet and pulled out a crisp $100 bill. "Here. For your trouble." Jay glanced at the money but shook his head. "I didn't do it for that." Richard was taken aback. "You're turning down $100. Jay shrugged. "My mom says if you help someone just for a reward, then it ain't kindness. It's business." Richard stared at the boy, speechless. Here he was, a billionaire, being schooled in generosity by a 13-year-old. As Jay grabbed his bike, preparing to leave, Richard called after him. "Wait." Jay turned. "Yeah." Richard studied him. "What do you want to be when you grow up?" "A businessman," Jay said without hesitation. "Like you." Richard's lips curled into an amused yet thoughtful smile. "Like me, huh?" Jay nodded. Yeah. But, maybe a little different. Richard chuckled, intrigued by the boy's honesty. An idea was forming in his mind, one that would change both of their lives forever. Tell you what, Richard said. How about we grab a bite to eat? My treat. You can tell me more about this business dream of yours. Jay hesitated. I gotta get home. My mom worries. Richard respected that. Then let's make a deal. You tell your mom what happened, and if she's okay with it, I'll pick you up tomorrow. We'll talk business over lunch. Jay thought for a moment before nodding. All right. Deal. As Richard watched the boy pedal away, he realized that this chance encounter was more than just a flat tire. It was the start of something much bigger. The next day, Richard arrived at Jay's modest neighborhood, a stark contrast to the opulence he was accustomed to. The houses were small but well kept, and children played in the front yards. Jay was already waiting outside, his mother standing beside him. She was a woman of quiet strength, her warm gaze studying Richard with a mix of curiosity and caution. You must be Mr. Langston, she said, extending her hand. I'm Angela. Richard shook her hand. Nice to meet you, Angela. Jay helped me out last night. I wanted to hear more about his ambitions. Angela smiled at her son with pride. He's always been a dreamer. Says he wants to change the world. Jay grinned. I just want to build something big. Richard nodded. Well, let's start with lunch and go from there. With Angela's blessing, Jay hopped into the Bentley, ready to embark on what would be the most important conversation of his young life. At the restaurant, Jay's curiosity was evident as he took in the luxurious surroundings. The crisp white tablecloths, chandeliers, and attentive waitstaff were unlike anything he had ever experienced. Richard watched the boy with interest, fascinated by his unfiltered excitement and wonder. As they ate, Richard asked, So, tell me, Jay. What kind of business do you want to start? Jay thought for a moment. Something that helps people. Maybe a business that fixes cars for free if people can't afford it. Richard raised an eyebrow. That's ambitious. But how will you make money? Jay shrugged. Maybe some people pay, some don't. My mom always says when you help people, good things come back to you. Richard leaned back, impressed. You think like an entrepreneur already. Over the next few months, Richard became a mentor to Jay, teaching him about business, finance, and leadership. Jay absorbed everything like a sponge, eager to learn. Their friendship grew, and Richard found himself rediscovering the joy of guiding someone with pure ambition. Eventually, with Richard's help, Jay launched his first small business, a community auto repair service with a unique payment model. It became a success, drawing attention from media and investors alike. But as the business grew, so did the challenges. Jay faced financial hurdles, difficult decisions, and moments of doubt. With Richard's guidance, he learned to navigate setbacks, understanding that resilience was as crucial as ambition. In time, Jay's vision expanded beyond repairs. He started programs to teach young people auto mechanics and entrepreneurship, giving them the same opportunities Richard had given him. Richard watched with pride as Jay's dream took flight, realizing that sometimes, the greatest investments aren't in stocks or real estate, but in people.